2, 1, and we're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Wheel Talk. And hello, Brittany.
Hello, Fred. How are you?
I'm fantastic, thank you. I'm basking in the afterglow of a glorious weekend, which we can talk about in more detail.
I can't wait to talk about that.
Yeah, but before we get into that, you wanted to talk about Christmas.
Yeah, I did want to talk about Christmas, and I actually put the thumbnail as is Christmas bullshit. And I don't actually think Christmas is bullshit, just for the record, so that we don't start off with like, Brittany's a Scrooge. But I did want to read some crazy stats that I found about Christmas. And the reason that I started thinking about this is because there's a postal strike here in Canada, which is super annoying. And so my mother-in-law, she texted the other day and was like, I have a bunch of stuff coming from Amazon because they don't ship through like Canada Post. They ship through like FedEx or other things or their own shipping company. And so she's like, all the gifts are going to show up at your house. And it just is like never ending. And they're on like a fixed income because they're retired. And I'm thinking like, who are you buying all these gifts for? Because we have like a smallish family on that side. And so I was just like, oh my God, this is a lot of gifts because gifts overwhelm me. And as a mom, I learned a long time ago that like my kids, I got them so much stuff when they were little. And like by like the third gift, they're like, I'm tired. Like, I don't want to open any more gifts. Like they got so bored and they inevitably ended up liking the smallest, most inexpensive or things that you're just like, what? So now I'm very thoughtful about Christmas gifts. I hate buying things that don't have a use in my house. If my kids want to buy something, I'm very like, where are you going to put it? Because right now, all your like Jamie for her birthday wants a stuffy that's a Jellycat brand. And I'm like, in her room yesterday, I said, you see where all your stuffies are? They're all on the floor and you don't even care about them. It's like, what do you want another one for? So anyway, that's like sort of my preface about like how I am as a mom and how I approach things and like the way I feel about gifts. But I wanted to read some of these like crazy stats about Christmas. And then I'm going to ask your opinion on whether you think Christmas is a net positive or a net negative. So in Canada, in December 2022, Canadians added over 8 million to their credit card debt, bringing the total to $91.5 billion. That was a 21% increase from January 2021. 51% of Canadians who buy gifts bought it on their credit cards or used debt to fund Christmas. And 25% of those Canadians have not paid off last Christmas's debt.
Wow.
That's crazy. So that's one. Heart attack deaths. More people die in December from heart attacks than any other month. And more people die on December 25th from heart attacks than any other day of the year.
No way. That's crazy.
Yeah. So there's a couple different reasons. Factors contributing to this include winter weather. So people are just generally more unhealthy in the winter, added stress from parties and family activities, ignoring warning signs of heart attacks and putting it off until New Year. I'll go see the doctor in the New Year. Holiday-induced delay in seeking treatment. So it's not entirely just like stress, but a lot of that I think is stress because I know a lot of people are broke during Christmas. Here's a good statistic though. About 30% of annual charitable donations happen in December. So like 1/3 of all donations to all charities happens in 1 month of the year, which is in December. And 10% happens in the last 3 days of December. And now my pessimistic side is telling me that that's all just people looking for tax breaks in the last bit of the year. But I don't want to think that. And then a lot of people start nonprofits in November and December and stuff like that. And then the average amount that people spend at Christmas is $1,000, with 71% of that going to gifts. I think that was it. Those were all my stats, I think. Nice. And then I found some stats on how much crime increases, but there wasn't like solid evidence that it's like December like the other ones were. So anyway, those are just some like stats about Christmas. And so I wanted to ask your opinion. Do you think it's a net positive or a net negative?
Well, let's take them one at a time. The first one you said was the credit card debt, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's just people being fiscally irresponsible. But at the same time, there is a lot of pressure to get your kids what you want and keep up with the Joneses. And obviously, if your kid wants the latest Transformer or whatever the new thing is, there's a lot of pressure to buy that toy, and then there's probably companies making it like a false scarcity, so like to pump up the value of that
Yeah.
prized possession. And every year there seems to be like some sort of toy that all the kids want. And so there's a lot of pressure, but then also, a valuable lesson for kids is to be like, hey, listen, sorry, we can't afford that gift this year. That's life. You can't get what you want all the time. And that could be a valuable Christmas gift for someone. Not very cool, obviously, like it's a little
Yeah.
bit of a grinchy Christmas mood. Hey, here's some realism.
Yeah.
But there is a really good article written ages ago in The Guardian by a guy called George Monbiot, and it was called Pathological Consumerism. And it was about how people, my mum was really guilty of this, was just sending me like in the post, like not necessarily to do with Christmas, but just nonsense plastic trinkets to just like, oh, I bought you a little gift. I thought it would give you a smile. And I'd be like, yeah, but this is going to end up in a landfill somewhere and it served no purpose but to make me smile for a brief second. To be like, oh,
Yeah.
cool, thanks, mum. So like novelty gifts that just end up in landfill
Wow.
are just like this huge net negative for society. They just create a
Huge.
tiny little bit of profit for small Chinese companies or whatever. So yeah, I think on the whole though, I like Christmas. I like Christmas, but I
Yeah.
like giving thoughtful gifts, like writing someone a song
Yeah.
or doing something, or like an activity or an experience. I think is much better than a nonsense possession that like is just gonna be ignored in a few years and end up in a landfill. So yeah, well, that's my point of view. So I think Christmas is cool, but yeah, the unnecessary spending is unnecessary.
Yeah. And I think that's my take too, because I actually love Christmas. It's my favorite holiday, and not because I like the consumerism at all. I hate the shopping, I hate all that stuff, but I love the spirit of giving. And I think when people have that as like, their like guiding light or whatever for what they're doing at Christmas time, then it can be a really positive holiday. And I think there's so many fun activities that allow people to get out in the community that they wouldn't normally do just, around the rest of the year. And so I love that. Like there's a sense of community and giving and all of that stuff. I just feel like there's so much pressure. One of the things that I think is that the people who love Christmas the most and are probably the most generous are the ones that, don't have any debt, and the ones that feel like they have something to give back, and the ones that are spending all of these thousands of dollars on, toys that they don't need are probably the people that have the most debt and are the most poor, because like you say, they're probably fiscally irresponsible in a lot of ways, or they're just poor and
Yeah.
they're having a really hard time making those choices. And I was trying to get the numbers, but I didn't have time of like, what would happen if people put $1,000 into like, investments once a year instead of buying gifts that they don't need, and nobody even uses in the end, usually, and how much better people would be in the end. Probably a million times better, but people wouldn't do that. They would say, if somebody said, with this one time a year you have to put $1,000 in investments, people would go, what? Like, I can't do that, that's impossible. But Christmas comes around and people aren't like, yeah, nah, can't do it, sorry, which is like really sad, because I sometimes just see all this exchange of money. Like I'm taking $1,000 out of my money to buy $1,000 worth of gifts for somebody else that I don't really know whether they like. They're taking $1,000 to spend it on my family to buy gifts that they're not really sure that we're gonna like. And the year that I had the best years were not last year, the year before that. I gave my kids a year of experiences. That was awesome. They loved that. And another year we did all homemade gifts. Everything had to be homemade. So we had to start like months and months in advance, because some of, my kids were working on things made out of wood and all that stuff. So we did spend money, but it was a lot of time and thoughtfulness and like, what am I going to do to make this gift? And those gifts are like, my in-laws still have them. My parents still have them. I have all of my kids like homemade things, and it's like the best.
Tell me more about the year of experiences.
Oh gosh, there were so many. I wrote a letter basically saying that like you'll never remember, collect experiences, not things in your lifetime, because you'll never remember all the stuff you bought, but you will remember all the things that you did. And so we went like roller skating. I'm trying to think, like we went to a play. I took Jacob to a play. Some of them were just like things that we did on family holidays. I have there's a bunch of them, but they're all mixed up in that one year. But some of the funnest ones were like the most inexpensive. Like the roller skating was hilarious. And not just like watching my kids roller skate, but watching grown men fall on their asses like over and over again. And this one guy was like a fit, like he was like athletic, and he took his like 7-year-old, and she was like whizzing around, and he could not stand up. And I was laughing so hard, and eventually he like looked over. He's like, I see you laughing at me. He's like, you can't even try this, so keep laughing. And I was like, I will. It's really funny. Like you are literally like allowing me to have a lot of entertainment right now. And it was so good. But
So how do you give a year of experiences at Christmas time?
well, I gave them like I gave them an envelope that had 12 envelopes in it,
No
essentially.
way. That's
And
super
so
cool.
they didn't know what their experiences were going to be until that month. And so they got to open their experience the beginning of that month, and then they got to figure out what it was. So like the first month, Joe took them skiing. So skiing was their first experience. And then the second month, I took Jacob to a play about boxing, which he didn't really like. He was not into it.
It's
But
an experience.
not everyone's going to be great. We got to go to like a fancy restaurant of their choosing. We got to go roller skating. Trying to think of all the things that we did. We did a lot of stuff that year, but it was fun because it was like a surprise every month.
That's super cool. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That reminds me of the thing that you did for Jacob on his birthday, which was, remind me again, The Amazing Race.
Yeah.
That was really cool. Yeah, I listened to that episode the other day, actually. It randomly popped on my Spotify, and I was like, oh, I'll give it a listen. So yeah, that was really cool. Yeah, so that sounds great. I think experiences are really wonderful. I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but it's worth mentioning again that last year I had a string of pockets as like an advent calendar, and I put different things in the advent calendar for every day for Chris.
Oh, that's so good.
And I put like, so they were like very small little things. Sometimes it was just a saying or like a little drawing. I drew a little heart that was hugging itself, and it just said, loving yourself isn't vanity, it's sanity. And then sometimes some of them, they would be like, oh, this entitles you to a 15-minute foot massage. This one, and then I did one that was like a little treasure hunt. And that came to like another little thing. And then one of them was a magic trick, because actually I've never mentioned this on the podcast before, but I actually do magic, which I'm a little bit embarrassed about. But yeah, I do card trick. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, one was like a magic trick, which I'd practiced loads, and she wasn't that impressed with. I mean, she was impressed with, but like some of the joy of magic is like sharing the experience. So like, oh, tell your friend, like, that magic trick. And she was like, oh, and she couldn't recall it properly. And I think that's one of the coolest things about magic is like normally like the secret of magic is when people tell the magic, they sort of embellish it and they're like, oh, wow, that's actually not what happened. But like your memory of it is like more magical than like the actual experience. But she was like, nah. And I was like, okay, I'll tell it. This is what happened. Anyway, yeah, so we did lots of like cool
that's funny.
things like all throughout the Advent. So 24 days up to it. And they were like little things. Some of them were like jokes as well, like little Christmas jokes, which were really fun. So that was a really cost-effective way of like making little fun experiences for her all through Advent. And then Christmas, after, like on the Christmas day, there was a bit of a Christmas come down, if I'm honest, because we had the presents opening, and they were like, not grandiose presents. Although I did write her a song, which was really sweet.
I remember that video. That inspired me to write a rap about snow removal, which I was too embarrassed to actually put out last year. So I'm going to do it. But anyway, keep going. That
No
was an
way.
awesome song.
Thank you very much. And yeah, so these like little thoughtful gifts. But after Christmas, I had a huge like a come down. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like the build up was so much. So I'm going to remind myself this year that the build up to Christmas is actually way more exciting than Christmas Day, because you know, like you're thinking about like giving gifts and like, oh, this will be a thoughtful gift, she'll love that. And then after Christmas, I've got to like manage my expectations, because I actually remembered like, oh shit, yeah, that's over now, and that like
Yeah.
leaves you with a real sunken feeling of like, oh, Christmas is done. So yeah, that is a reminder for everyone listening. Sometimes the build up to Christmas is actually way more enjoyable than Christmas itself. So be
Yeah.
mindful of that.
I really think that for me, that's what I'm going to try and focus on this season, is like stretching the holiday out rather than just like go, go, go to get ready for Christmas. And I want to do like random acts of kindness this year. So I'm going to pick like 5, and I don't want any recognition for them. So I'm going to do like totally like, no, I'm going to just do them anonymously. Hopefully I can drop them off at somebody's house or whatever, so they can't see them. Cause like, that's the funnest, right? Is feeling like they get to be like, who did this for me?
Oh, that's really sweet.
So I'm going to do that. And then if anybody's in Edmonton, I don't know exactly what day, but I'll keep you guys posted. I'm dragging my friend Bean to the mall, which is like one of the biggest malls in the world. And we're going to do like a free hug thing.
Oh, cool.
And so I want to just be like, and I'm equally like excited about like how many people are going to be like awkwardly not knowing how to hug somebody in a wheelchair and getting
Are you gonna film it? Make some content?
I'm gonna film some of that, yeah. But I saw this one where a guy blindfolded himself and did like hugs for mental health, and it
I
was
saw
like
that.
my favorite. I was like, oh my god, I love this. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
That's really cool. Now, on the subject of songs,
Yeah.
you actually wrote a very cool song, like so cool. And this is going to be a great segue into promoting both of our Patreons. Number one, you wrote a great song, which is phenomenal. We can talk about that. But I just wanted to also thank you publicly for signing up to my Patreon. I made a Patreon, for those of you that don't know, and I didn't really put anything on it. I was sort of dragging my feet. And then all of a sudden I got an email saying, Brittany Noonsing has signed up to your Patreon. And I was like, oh, amazing. And then I was like, well, I've got to make some content for my Patreon now, because I've got my first patron, which was you. So I made a lovely video, which was, well, it was just a video of my day, and
Yeah.
it was to do with me going to the gym. And I just thought, wowzers. Interestingly enough, when you're prompted to make content, you can make content out of like, well, just your day. And it ended up being quite a cool little video. I put it on the Patreon, and then I got my second patron, which was super cool. And I was like, no way, now I've got 2 Patrons, and like content on there, which is really cool. And at the moment, I'm having a Black Friday sale. So if you use the code BF50, you can get 50% off of joining any tier on my Patreon, which sounds it sounds really cringy, because I don't like self-promoting, but like, use the code BF50 for 50% off. That sounds like such an influencer thing to say, but you can sign up to my Patreon.
Yeah.
But also on your Patreon, there is a song which you wrote for
An audition. I did.
an audition, which was absolutely bloody phenomenal. I loved it, and I cannot see how that doesn't win. You must win that audition. Like, that was clearly, you've got to be a finalist at the very least. It was a wonderful song it was a parody of the Smash Mouth song. Is it?
Yeah.
What was?
Smash Mouth All Stars.
Yeah, All Star.
Yeah.
Chris and I, we had that song in our head. I watched it like 3 or 4 times, loved it. We had the song in our head like afterwards, like, and it was absolutely brilliant. So you should sign up to Brittany's Patreon for that.
Yeah.
And if you want to
check it
sign up
out.
to mine as well, I will be releasing more content on there as well. So there, shameless plug.
It's not a shameless plug. It's a amazing, excited plug. Yeah, dude, the first video that Fred put on there is impressive. I'll say that. So yeah, go check it out. I'm going to give you, for anybody in here who is part of my Patreon, I'll give you a little update about the audition. They did contact me. they put in all caps, "We loved your audition. We aren't casting, or we're not starting filming for 9 to 12 months, so we'll be in touch in January," is what they said.
Oh, amazing.
So I have a feeling that I'm going to get it. I have no idea exactly what the show is about, other than it's called Challenge Accepted, and it's challenges that I'm assuming that they organize for you to do. So I'm a little like nervous about, it said like it's all in the US, so I probably have to travel a lot, which I'm not like crazy excited about, but I'm excited about the show. So
It did
it's
also
cool.
say all expenses paid.
Yeah, it did say that. So that's cool.
I love that song. My name is Brittany Noonzig, and I
Yeah.
think you should choose me. It's so
You'll be in
good.
your new TV show. Yeah.
Oh
There's
my
like
God,
a snippet.
you guys should check it out. It's absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. So yeah, we have Patreons, and the links are in the description if you want to check it out.
Yes. Okay. Well, I just want to get to this question before I forget. Are you all in the Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays camp? So I think the Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays debate is another one of those like easily offended type things that's happening now, where somebody that has a really awesome intention is saying Merry Christmas, and somebody gets easily offended because they don't celebrate Christmas in the Christian tradition or that kind of thing. So I'm never offended if somebody says something kind to me. And I don't think other people should be offended either. So I think that it's a wonderful way to greet people. And I don't really care what they say to me. I'm going to give them if they say Merry Christmas, I'll say Merry Christmas back. If they say Happy Holidays, I'll say Happy Holidays. And if they don't say anything, then that's fine too. But yeah, I'm a both.
Yeah, I think these days people are pretty too easily offended over certain things. If you say,
Yeah.
I don't know, some people are offended if you say Happy Holidays and be like, "Hey man, this is a Christian country," and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So you can't
Exactly.
win, really. You
I
know what I mean?
know.
You have to be, yeah. On another note, I've got some other things to talk about. Also, I'll highlight this comment really quickly because it vibes with we tend to think of Christmas as a month-long season rather than a single day. I think that's a great comment there, James,
Yeah.
because I think, yeah, like I say, with the whole Advent calendar, little treats every day, it's a really beautiful time to like be in the Christmas spirit for the whole time, have a Christmas tree, feel Christmassy. It's much more about the whole month of December than just the day.
Yeah. Yeah, this I just want to look at this one too. In Argentina, we don't wait until the next day to open gifts. We open it at midnight. I used to do that with my like grandparents. We opened one gift that was from my grandparents on Christmas Eve, and I kind of wish that we did that with all the gifts, because then you don't have to get up early. It's not like, yeah. So I like that. I like that tradition.
Yeah. I have another thing to share.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I have like the thing that we alluded to at the beginning. I can't wait to hear about. So let's talk about that.
So I'm going to preface this with, I know sometimes when I talk about, I'm just going to say it, taking drugs, there are a certain cohort of the audience that disapprove, which is fine because I get it. Society, we've been taught that drugs are bad, and my mum and dad are probably going to frown upon this, but I want to share a beautiful experience I had this weekend involving a substance called MDMA. Now, if you don't know what MDMA is, it's commonly known as ecstasy. It's a beautiful, wonderful substance that really promotes open communication, and it's used medicinally for people with PTSD. It's such a beautiful way to communicate. And me and Chris this weekend had like an intentional use of it. So for those of you guys that don't know, we are moving in together. I can't live here anymore. I have to move out. So we're going to find a place together. And I thought what a beautiful thing to do before we moved in was to have this sort of intentional MDMA experience where we talked about our fears, tried to foster a deeper connection. We had some sort of minor conflict resolution and sort of talk about our hopes and dreams for the future in a way that, again, if you've never experienced this substance, that it's hard for me to sort of explain, but like it's sort of like all your, I guess, fears and insecurities drop and you just have this completely beautiful, honest exchange. And it was one of the most beautiful exchanges ever. It was absolutely phenomenal. And we spoke about our fears, and she confided in me that one of her biggest fears about moving in together was repeating past mistakes. And I was like, oh my God, that's such a good one, you know? And then we spoke about that. And we spoke about all sorts of wonderful things. And then we had this beautiful, beautiful connection. It was very, very, very lovely. And then ever since, it feels like we've really become entwined a little bit closer. Like we've deepened our connection, and we're sort of basking in the afterglow of that evening. And we're just really, really looking forward to moving in together. And I think it's fostered a deeper connection. And if you've got any questions about it, I'm happy to answer anything about that.
I always am curious how you, before you do the drugs, how you set the mood or the tone or the intention so that it's a positive experience, and how you stop like wayward thoughts from like taking over kind of thing. Because I am not a substance doer in any way. I do not like drinking alcohol. I have done things in the past, and I tried ecstasy once, and it was okay, but I didn't have like this like amazing crazy experience. I just remember just kind of feeling like, all my nerve pain went away, and it was just kind of like, but yeah, I have like an anxious like body thing, and so whenever I put something in my body, then my brain is like imagining what it's doing to my body. And I don't know how you stop that kind of stuff from happening when you do that.
So it's a little bit different to like psychedelics, where psychedelics, you do have that kind of, I feel like a come up is like a feeling of when your heart starts racing, and there's like a little bit of like your fingers get clammy and your eyes widen a little bit. And it does feel uncomfortable, especially so we had 2 like little dabs basically. So it was a very, very, very smooth, slow come up, which really aided that. But if you have like a large amount, then the come up can be quite overwhelming, and you're like, oh fuck me, oh I feel, and then it kind of like peters out, and then you're like, whoa, this is fucking amazing, I love it. So there's different ways of doing it, and because I've had a lot of experience in the past, sorry mum, but I know how to sort of navigate these experiences with a sense of responsibility. Dosage is very important. Again, set and setting, set is your mindset. So like with intention, nothing to do, nothing to do the next day, realizing that like you might be up late, your sleep might be affected, acknowledging those secondary things. The setting, so you're in like your physical surroundings, which is like, okay, we're in my house, the door's locked, no one's going to come in, we're not going to be disturbed, it's just you and I, and we're just going to have this conversation. So having the right amount in the right headspace and the right physical space, they contribute massively to having, a good time, a positive experience, which it really was for us. It was really, really nice. But yeah, sometimes, having that come up feeling it's like it's anxiety inducing, can be, like if it's too much. But yeah, we navigated it well. And we had a really beautiful, beautiful, beautiful time. And it's something I've done in the past with intention. I've also done it before with, at parties, because a lot of people associate with a party drug. And yeah, I mean, it can be really nice at parties, but I genuinely do believe like why they use it for therapy, like MDMA assisted psychotherapy for people with PTSD, is because it's such a beautiful drug for communicating, for like opening up, just open, honest communication. So, and that's So I don't know if you have any other questions, but like I'm open. I'm an open book.
I definitely think that like the what's the movie that Joe watched that one time? I can't remember, but it basically talks about the history of specifically psychedelics. And I can't remember which administration, like which president sort of like had a war on drugs, but that it all changed from it being a therapeutic substance to these are terrible. And I think like when you put anything in any camp like that, it takes away the ability for it to be therapy, and reduces the amount of good that it can do, just to alleviate some of the, harm that it's causing, which, you have to have a balance, because there are people that will kind of go crazy. And I don't think that it's a good thing if you are doing it all of the time, spending all of your money on it, and it, depletes brain chemicals and things like that. So you have to have like a rest from it. But it's no different than like exercising. Like if you exercised excessively, you would have harmful effects. Because you need rest, but that doesn't mean that exercise is bad, right? So I definitely think that in certain instances, I know that like I have some family members who have lost their children, and they are doing it's a ketamine therapy. Ketamine therapy. Yeah. So it's like low dose ketamine, which is like I don't know. Some people always told me that like ketamine is horse tranquilizer. You're like, what is it? But what is it doing to them at low doses? But I know people that do microdosing on mushrooms and for productivity. There's like a whole bunch of things that actually are good for you. And, I think that they're socially acceptable things like caffeine. We can just down as much of that as we want. Energy drinks filled with sugar and caffeine that, 15, 16-year-olds are buying at the corner store. But if somebody talks about doing, MDMA or mushrooms or any other drug that they find therapeutic, even in like, I don't know, like I'm sure that there's therapeutic dosages and specific situations for all kinds of drugs, and people will look at you bad if you do that, right? So I think it's a balance. I probably should give myself more credit because I have anxiety just in general, and I do a lot to alleviate anxiety just in general. So I think that if I did a drug, I could probably just do the same things if I started getting anxious. But I don't know. I'm like, I have like a thing with loss of control, and instead of going with it and, seeing what cool like roads I can go down, I'm afraid of that loss of control. So yeah, I admire people that can do it.
Well, I was like, when I grew up, my parents told me, drugs are bad. And I think you should definitely tell kids drugs are bad, because I don't think you should encourage them to do them while their brain is still developing. But I didn't try it until I was like 23 or something. So I was like I would say that in my circle, I was a very late starter. But yeah, the first time I ever did it, I was like, holy shit, this is probably this is the best experience of my life so far. I cannot believe people have told me this is a bad thing. But, I have to say, there is what goes up must come down. So, you have a come up and then there is a come down. But obviously, if you have, it all depends on dosage, setting, etc., and expectations. So you're like, oh, okay, well, if I feel a bit low energy tomorrow, I've cleared my diary. I'm going to make room for that,
Yeah.
And also, I'm not trying to convince anyone to do it. I'm just saying that I did it. I had a bloody great time, like it's something that it worked for us beautifully, really, really, really well. And just the conversations that we had are incredible. And the thing is, like, I know, for example, my parents will frown upon this immensely. So apologies. But Chris's parents, oh my God, they're so much more open-minded. Chris told her mum and she was like, no way, that's amazing. Oh my God, I think me and Nico should do that. Like, that's her husband. Like, we should do that. And she was like, yeah. And then they were talking about coming over for Christmas. And they're like, well, can we all do MDMA together? And I was like, wow. I was like, oh my God, like, that would be amazing. Like, what a great way to get to know my girlfriend's parents. But they're so open-minded to it. And I love that. Whereas, like, I wouldn't tell my parents about that. Obviously, they'd hear it secondhand from the podcast. But it's not something that they'd be thrilled at. They would be, oh, that's nice, and then they change the subject, which is fine. I get that, like they don't understand it as well as I do, so they would, discourage me from doing it and sharing it with them, and but it was just such an absolutely phenomenally beautiful experience. We spoke about the fears of moving in. I spoke about lots of like something that I'll probably keep it vague because it was very personal, but something that I had been so frightened to say to her for the longest time. And then I just said it out loud. And as soon as I said it out loud, I was like, oh my God, that feels so good. And she was like, oh, and then again, I'm being deliberately vague, but it was just like, oh, and now that's out in the open. And like, we can talk about that, and we're going to move forward. And again, like minor conflict resolution. Like I spoke about like, oh, the other day, there was a situation and I personally, I thought you overreacted. And then it was like, no, it's not like that, it's like the expectation, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, and I really understand your point of view now, and it's like
Yeah.
so congruent for just
Yeah.
yeah, it was just
Do you do
absolutely
you
beautiful.
do you know who Jordan Peterson is?
Yeah, yeah, of
Oh,
course.
okay, so anybody that doesn't know him, he's sort of like he's a psychologist, a Canadian psychologist. And I
Hmm.
got like some people would say he was a disgraced psychologist, but it's ridiculous the thing that he got his license taken away for. It was because he spoke out about COVID. So anyway,
Oh, it
I
wasn't
like
COVID, was it?
I thought
I
it
thought it
was
was
cool.
something
I
else.
thought COVID restrictions and stuff is what I heard. I don't know. I'm just speaking
I
out of
thought
my
it was
ass right now.
before COVID. I thought the thing that he was disgraced for, which, well, it was pronouns. It was like if people want to be
Oh,
called,
maybe.
like if, yeah, it was the
Yeah.
transgender pronouns. It was like if you want to be called whatever, that's absolutely fine. But like the Canadian government wanted to make it illegal for you to not use their pronouns, or no, illegal. Yeah. So like, and he was like, no way, like you're policing language. That's what he, and then he was labeled as a transphobe. That's what he was
Oh,
initially.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm not sure how. Anyway, we're not getting into that. But anyway, so one of the things that he talks about is that like people who are rule breakers in high school, people that are not rule breakers at all end up with really bad outcomes, more depression, anxiety, that kind of thing. And people who
Yeah.
are terrible rule breakers and don't have any inhibition whatsoever end up in jail. And he said the people who experiment with rule breaking and experiment with some of those things, I'll keep talking as you take a pee.
Sorry.
That's okay.
When you gotta go, you gotta go.
Yeah, exactly. And he really talks about the level of balance sort of that you have to find, because he said you don't want to be an alcoholic, but you don't ever want to you don't want to be the person that has so much restriction and like guilt and all that if you try alcohol you think you're a terrible person, or that you think you're like self-righteous kind of thing. And I think that's kind of like what life is like in general, what you're talking about, that if you have so much like, ooh, drugs are bad, that you can't see even somebody else's point of view who does want to do them for therapeutic things or even just for fun, but responsibly. And if you're on the other side where you're the person that just does them like without inhibition. Yeah, that's a lot. That was fast. How do you
Yeah, it's a
pee
big
so
one,
fast?
eh? Like, it's huge.
No, but like what's your like size of catheter?
Um, it is a eight.
Is it 18?
18.
Like long or wide? Like it's an
So
18 French?
it's 12, then it goes into 18. So like as it's telescopic, it's 12 and then 18.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
It's a
that's why
quick
you
one,
pee
yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
I think mine is a 12 French, so it's pretty skinny like the whole way around. So it takes me sometimes like 3 minutes for all the pee to come out. No, maybe not. Maybe like a minute and a half. But
Yeah,
anyway,
also I like squeeze my abs to like push it out quicker.
oh, I see. Yeah. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, like Jordan Peterson talks a lot about the balance that has to be reached between like, the two ends of the spectrum with rule breaking and breaking too many rules. And I think that is important. I mean, like I experimented with rule breaking when I was like in university, and I realized things about myself that I know now because of that. And if I hadn't done that, I don't think I would be as secure as I am in watching other people do drugs and things like that and be like, that's awesome, that's for you, but not necessarily for me. But if I hadn't tried, then I never would have known that, I really do feel more in control and more myself when I'm not doing that stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like I say, when it comes to stuff that really helps me, and I speak to people like in my sort of circle. It's like I sent Benji a lovely voice note, and also my friend Mickey, about the whole experience, like going in more detail than a public podcast. And they were like,
Yeah.
"Oh man, that's such a beautiful voice note. Thanks so much for sharing that with me. It sounds so amazing." And yeah, it's just so cool. But I don't want to. Like I say, I'm not here like advocating for it. Like, hey, everyone should do it. I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
no.
But and I just want to address some of the other things you said. Like, yeah, like if you take it too much, or if you take too much of it, there's always like there's responsible drug use and then there's irresponsible drug use, but that could be every like I think the lethal dose of caffeine is only 5 grams, which is
Really?
wild. Yeah, yeah. So you can order like bags of caffeine, and people have died because they've mixed it like they thought it was creatine or something. So like the lethal dose of caffeine is only 5 grams. Because
Oh
imagine
my
that you have
God.
like so I take caffeine in little capsules. So you have 100 milligrams of caffeine and 100 milligrams of something called L-theanine. So I take
Yeah.
them, and that's just like a cup of coffee. But yeah, so you could easily die from other things. Anyway, I don't want to like linger on this. I just wanted to say I had a really wonderful time,
Yeah.
and it was absolutely
Um,
beautiful.
well, let's move into the another thing that I want to talk about, which you like kind of alluded to with the thing you talked about with like your fears. I just wanted to ask you because I was thinking about this the other day when I was telling somebody about my journey as a content creator, and I was reminiscing about the first time when I used to manage a nonprofit. I had to go to businesses and universities and things like that and talk about this nonprofit. And I was so afraid. Like, I was so terrified. And I remember once I brought Jamie, who might have been like 3 at the time, because it was during a time that I couldn't find a babysitter. So she sat in the thing. And then afterwards, she goes, "It's okay, Mom. We all knew you were really scared. It's over now." And she like, she was 3 and she could see that I was doing a horrible job speaking in public. And not that I do a better job now. I'm not any more articulate, but I'm way more confident, and that matters. And so I just wanted to ask you, is there anything that you were terrified to do before that seems like no big deal? And what is something you're scared of now that either you think you can't do, you're not smart enough, or you don't have the abilities, or just that you're like, "Ooh, that's so uncomfortable."
Well, I'm still pretty scared of moving in with Chris because as much as we talked about a lot of things, it's scary. And like I said, she said one of the biggest fears is repeating mistakes, and it's wonderful to have a conversation and an open communication about it. But it's a lot harder putting that into practice in the long term. We could move in, and the first year would be great. But what about the fifth, 6th year down the line? Like in fact, one of my biggest fears, I will confess this to you. One of the things we spoke about is how much I use my phone, and I said to her like, when we move in together, I can't hide that. I use my. You think that I use my phone a lot, but you have no idea how much I use my phone when I'm on my own, and when we're together, I know that is such an incredibly unattractive quality, and I don't want to be that guy who uses his phone compulsively, but I do sometimes. I find it stupidly addictive. And she said, "Yeah, that is something that I'm worried about." And I said it to my friend Benji, and again, Benji is such a great friend. He said, "Think about what you just said." He said, "You're scared of moving in with someone because you're going to have to face a bad habit." And he's
Yeah.
like, that's what being in a relationship is about, facing bad habits together, like growing together. And like the example she gave the other day, she was like, "Oh, I came home and you were playing Grand Theft Auto," which I don't play very often, but I played it, and that is a game that you can pause at any time. And I was like, "I'm in the middle of a mission," but you can pause it, right? You can pause it, and instead of like acknowledging her, like, "Oh, hey, how you doing? Have you had a good day?" I was just like, "Oh, I'm in the middle of a mission," and I carried on playing it. And of course, barriers are when the defensive barriers are low and you have this opportunity
Yeah.
to communicate, instead of like being like, "Oh yeah, but I was doing this," I was just like, "Oh, you know what, that's a really good point, I'm really sorry." And in fact, sometimes I get there before she even prompts me. So I'm sort of going off on a bit of a tangent here. My point is, when you asked me what my
Yeah.
fears were Chris seeing what I'm really like
Yeah.
when we live
Oh, I
apart,
see. Yeah.
we have like our time together and our time apart. But
So
when we
you
live
have
together,
you have
she will,
Chris Fred and Fred.
yeah,
You
like
know what
I
I
won't be able
mean?
to hide my bad
Yeah.
habits when we live
Mhm.
together, which is a really big fear of mine. And that's one I confided in her at the weekend, and she said, "Yeah, well, we need to work through that together. Like that is the thing." And she also said, "I don't like it when I nudge you to be like, 'Hey, stop looking at your phone,' and then you get really defensive." And I'm like, "I'm only looking at it for a minute." But I
Yeah.
do, like, if I like she like turn her back, like I'm just like go off, I'm just gonna go to the toilet. I'm like, "Okay." I'll scroll, like have a little scroll while she's in the toilet. And that is a really like, it's compulsive. I
Yeah,
don't like it. Like, it's not like it's going to
I know.
nourish me by like having a 2 minute scroll and then hiding it, being like, oh, how, how was your wee? I wasn't doing anything. You're like, it's a really, really bad habit. And I know I'm not the only one that suffers with it. And I know it's like a
Oh
bit of
my
a
God.
first world
Me
problem,
too.
but like it is a problem for me. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, one of my biggest fears is not, well, yeah, I'm less scared of it now after the weekend, but it's, yeah, acknowledging my bad habits and her seeing my soul, like, when you join forces, it's like such a commitment, like you'll be able to see the other person for like who they are behind closed doors. And I want to
I
be the
think
best. Yeah, I want to be the best person I can be for her, but yeah, I'm scared of that.
I think that's the thing I love about marriage or being in a committed relationship is that you love people anyway, and you like. I'm this comment right here. Just living with a woman is not for the faint of heart unless it's Brit. She seems lovely. I am not lovely to live with. Just an FYI. If Joe, you're watching this, I see you right now. I see you. I'm not easy to live with. I am a grumpy asshole a lot of the time, and it is not that I'm like actually grumpy. I like flip flop between like very controlling of my space and everything that I'm doing, and like fun, super fun, like goofy kind of thing. And so I have like triggers that like just pull me right back into like this control thing. And Joe and I both grew up in households where like our parents were very clean like people. The way we cleaned had to be specific, that kind of stuff. And I've changed a lot, but like I have certain things that like I still get like pulled back into like that control thing. And so if like Joe's cooking, oh, I'm just like, what are you doing? Don't do it like that. And I'm like, I try really hard, but sometimes I'm just like, no, I can't. You're doing it. You're gonna burn it. What's happening? Why? You're a grown man. How can you not know this? And so I'm like that. But where was I going with this? I lost my train of thought. Totally.
I was saying about my fears. Because
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Marco
Yeah.
said living with Brit Lee seems lovely, and I'm like, do you even listen to the podcast? Like, she's such a knob to Joe sometimes.
No, I'm not. I'm like telling you, I'm not lovely to live with. But I think I'm like I make up for it in like I make him enough food that he's
Yeah, yeah,
like I'm fed. I'm like that as a person where I'm like I anticipate people's needs and I will do things for them before they even ask for them. Like if Joe's sick, he doesn't ever have to get out of bed or anything like that. But if he's doing something, I'm really nitpicky. I'm like,
yeah,
nah, don't do it like that. But anyway, the point that I was trying to make is that in a committed relationship, when you do live together, there is like that growing pains period. And you do drive each other a little bit crazy a lot of the time, but you're also like, I wouldn't want it any other way. You know what I mean? Like when you're just like, oh, this person is my person. And holy shit, are they so annoying in so many ways? But like, I'd rather have this person than any other person, right? And you love them despite those things. And I think that's the beauty of being in a committed relationship is that you see somebody for who they are, all of them, and you try to grow together. And I think that I'm not even the same person remotely as I was when I first met Joe. Like when he met me, I was like literally like drinking out of a bottle of vodka and like
wow,
no, never now.
yeah.
And yeah, so you'll figure it out is my point. You'll figure it out.
So another one of my fears, which is again, this is a part of the conversation. I'm comfortable sharing, but I said to Chris, I was like, one of the things that I love about you the most is the fact that you're so independent. I wrote a huge. In fact, I don't know if I told you. It was actually really sweet. I wrote during the summer. You know how people rate people on a scale of 1 to 10, like, oh, she's a 10, she's a
Yeah.
9. Well, Chris was comparing herself to other people at the swimming pool, because
Oh,
we've been on like working out a lot recently and getting
yeah.
fit, and she was like, oh, I wish I looked like that, I wish I looked like that. So I wrote a list. I've actually got it in my journal, so maybe it's a little bit personal, but I wrote all the reasons my girlfriend is a 10. and I wrote down the huge list of like, and I wrote it to her, and she was like crying. She was like, "That's the most beautiful thing ever. That is so fucking sweet. I love that." And I was like, these are all the things that make you a 10 in my eyes. You know, you don't have to look like that lady. You know what I mean? Like these, and a lot of the things, again, so this is ties into your question about the fears. A lot of the things I love about Chris is the fact that she's so independent, you know, that she lives on her own. She runs her own business. She's good with money. She's a dog trainer. She's got a very, very well behaved dog. She's very disciplined, all that sort of thing. But when we join forces, she's no longer going to be, you know, maybe she'll be codependent, you know, like maybe she'll lose some of those qualities that I really admired about her when we first met. So that was another thing about that was another fear of mine.
Yeah.
Like seeing her through a different lens.
Yeah, like she's gonna lose the allure of part of what is attracting you to her is her like fierce independence. Which I don't know that like you necessarily have to lose that. Like maybe it's because Joe and I have kids, but we spend very little time together, honestly. We do not like the same shows. If he is in the room watching a movie with me, I like cheesy romantic Christmas movies that are super predictable. I am like, they are going to kiss right now. Then they're going to have a fight. Then she's going to have to catch a plane. He's going to almost miss it, or like all the things. I know exactly what's going to happen. And I'll watch that every time all day long. And he loves like action thriller. And I'm like sitting there like stressed out. I'm like, why would I want to get sweaty watching a movie? Who wants to do that? And so we don't like the same things. And we join each other in each other's activities just because we love the other person. But really we don't spend a lot of time together doing mutual activities because we don't have a lot of joint interests, but we don't like when each other is gone, which is like, you know, I think maybe you and Chris can have something like that too. You seem already like you have way more like joint interests and things that you like to do together than Joe and I probably will ever have. But I think the phones have actually ruined that part of it too, because I remember when Joe and I used to watch the same shows when we had cable and there was only so many shows to watch. And so we would watch what was on together at certain times because there was nothing else to watch and we didn't have phones in our pockets to watch whatever we want. But Joe's pretty much always got like a headphone in watching TikTok while he's doing everything, which I think is crazy. I'm like, how do you even focus on one thing when he knows to pause TikTok though? Like that is one thing that if I'm talking to him, he's pausing whatever he's doing because
God, that's so relatable. That's so relatable. It's like I'll constantly have my AirPods on, like passively listening to YouTube. The sort of things like the YouTube, again, this is a little tangent, but it's quite relatable. I said, what does Instagram feed you? Because I am sure that our algorithms are very different. And my Instagram algorithm is basically like fail videos, people getting very hurt and just like funny stuff like that. And she was like, God, no. And you remember I said the other day that like, Instagram was feeding me stuff like there was people obviously getting
horrible death videos,
like snuff videos, like actual snuff videos, like people dying. It was absolutely foul. And I scrolled a little bit and she's like, that is nothing like my Instagram feed. And we were looking at hers and it was like kittens and like fitness models. And I was like, that is so much more wholesome than mine. Like, so yeah, it's really weird how, but yeah, I relate to Joe. Like it's a really bad habit of mine. Like, to always be plugged in to YouTube and just passively listening to stuff. Normally it's like finance videos about crypto and stuff like that. It's really lame. Like, but
I don't know how you do that. Like if there's like a low point in a movie that I've seen before, I might like scroll to see something. And I do find my phone extremely addicting. So there'll be a point where I'm like, ooh, like get this thing away from me. Like I can't handle it. And I really don't want, like I have a thing behind me. I don't know if you can see, it says create more than you consume. And that's like, I get so mad at myself when I'm like, I can't build my TikTok or my Instagram because I should be putting more content on there because a lot of people that I probably could help, they're not even on YouTube. So they're not finding me there. And if they're scrolling aimlessly because they're stuck and they don't know how to live life in a wheelchair, that's a great place to find people that need my help. And so I should be on there more, but I keep telling myself I don't have time. When I'm like, it's bullshit. I just like spent like 45 minutes scrolling TikTok. And see, I'm like, mine are very wholesome. I love those videos where people scare the shit out of each other. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
laugh so hard. So I'm
yeah.
like, mine is like wholesome. I just don't know how to like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how people can doing two things at once, because my attention is like fully on one thing. And I'm guilty of like, if I'm watching something on my phone and my kids are in the background, they're like, mom, 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 mom.
Yeah.
And I can't hear anything they're saying. And then they're like, mom. And I'm like, what? Somebody's calling me? Why are you saying it so grumpy? And they're like, I said it like 30 times.
Wow.
So that's why I can't do what Joe does. Whereas he can listen to me talk, watch TV, watch TikTok, play Candy Crush all at one time. And maybe it's because he like manages a facility and 80 staff members and like all kinds of junk that he has to do every day. But I'm just like, no way, man. Everything I do is like solitary. I'm like editing a video, making a video, individually talking to people, mentoring people at like the hospital or something. It's all very individual, and I can't focus on more than one thing.
It's interesting that you say that, because like you said about creation over consumption. That's brilliant. That's like my mantra as well. I've actually got a post-it note that says that as well. But I was thinking about, yeah, like you said, like why don't I have time to create? But as soon as you signed up to my Patreon, I found like I had the video out within what, like 2 hours?
I know.
And I was like, yeah, well, you've paid for it, so I've got to give you something. And you were like, I'm just here for it. Don't worry about it. But yeah, and I'm like, well, I could easily just put that on YouTube, like it doesn't have to be behind a paywall. But the fact that I felt like almost in debt to you. I'm like, well, you've paid me money to be part of my Patreon. I need to give you something in return. That was a really good catalyst for creation. And then, yeah, and I made a really decent video. Like it wasn't like anything like hugely special, but it was definitely, a good little bit of content. And I was like, wow, that's how easy it is to create. That is how easy it is to create. But like, nope, just scroll, scroll, scroll. And recently, you remember when we first started chatting, I was like, I can't even have Instagram on my phone. It's that addictive.
Yeah.
I was speaking to Chris. This was another thing that I confessed, because it's like a big confession. I was like, look, I started like, having a rule, no screen in the bedroom, like no watching YouTube on the laptop, no phone next to the bed, and these were all like really healthy habits, and they have gone out the window. Like I've got Instagram on my phone. I sleep with my phone next to my bed. Sometimes I look at it first thing in the morning, which is the worst thing you could possibly do. And I was like, I don't know how I've slipped into these habits, but I've almost embraced them. And when you're scrolling, I have like a 15-minute thing, and it says, do you want another 15 minutes? I'm sure. Yeah, you got that. And I'm like, oh my, like, I'm just like, already? That's 15 minutes?
I
It's
know.
like the quickest 15 minutes of the entire day is when you're scrolling the reels. It is so bad. But yeah.
I know, it's horrible. That is one thing that I have to say I'm extremely good at, is never taking my phone to bed. And the only time I ever do is if my kids are at a sleepover and I take my phone to bed in case like the mom calls me or something, or if a kid is sleeping over here in case like the family has an emergency or something and they call me. And I hate it when I take my phone to bed, because I will stay up till like midnight doing stupid stuff that I'm like, that was a waste of my time. That like I will laugh at like comedians and stuff like that, but I'm like, it's just a waste of my time and my energy. But normally I never take my phone to bed, which is really hard for me as a mom, because I don't want my kids to take their phones to bed, but Jacob uses it as an alarm clock. And so I'm trying to teach him his own boundaries around phone use. And I can check, because I have like an app that monitors their phone use, what time he went to bed and stuff. So I will monitor and be like, okay, what time did you go to bed? And if he says 10:30, then I'll see what time he turned his phone off to see if he's actually telling the truth. And he does really good. So I think that's a good thing to learn around phone use. But yeah, I don't know. It's a blessing and a curse, because like I said, like I never would have met you without the power of social media. And we've developed this amazing friendship and our podcast and this live that we do. I never would have met anybody that's in the comments right now. Hi Josh, I saw you here. You haven't been on here for a while. So yeah, I wouldn't have like met any of these amazing people. And so yeah, it's one of my favorite things, like just doing this and interacting with people. And you would never have that without social media, but it's also very draining. When you can find genuine connection with another human being that's not like, trying to sell you something, amazing. But a lot of time you go on social media and it's like, how shitty is your life? how do you want to buy a course from me? And do you want to be part of my mastermind? And do you want, and I'm like, yeah, I do. I want to be part of it all because I'm terrible and I can do everything. So I
Yeah.
get like sucked into a lot of shit that takes up my time, spend money on stuff I never use, and it's just exhausting.
So one of the good things is if Chris stays here or I stay at hers, I never use my phone in the bed because she hates it, you know. And it's also embarrassing. It's rude. It's absolutely rude
It's
to like use the
rude.
yeah. But when she's not here, like the other day, I stupidly it was midnight and I was like dropping off. Like what? This is how my brain works.
Yeah.
I was like looking at stuff on the laptop. I was just like, oh, okay. And I shut the laptop. I was like, this is silly. I'm dropping off. But I'll just have a quick look at Instagram at midnight. I was like, a quick look at Instagram. Next minute, it's 1 o'clock in the morning and I've scrolled for an hour. And I'm like, what are you doing? It's midnight. Why are you doing this? You wouldn't do this if Chris was here. Stop it. So I do think in a positive way, us living together will actually
Yeah.
hold me accountable more for my phone use.
Yeah.
There's a few things I wanted to chat about before we end. I know we've already got to an hour, but on the subject of drugs, I wanted to give everyone a little update on my baclofen weaning journey. I got a beautiful message from Brian Kinney,
Oh, yeah.
who's had a lot of experience with baclofen and a lot of experience with bad spasms. And he said, so for those of you, just a quick recap, I've got down to like 40 and I was like on 30 milligrams a day and my rigidity just ramped up loads. I woke up in the morning, I was just like so stiff. And Brian sent me a message. He said, hey, listen, I heard what you said on the podcast. He said, just to let you know, I've been there, dude. I've tried to like get down to the absolute minimum. He said, it's not worth it. It's like your life is all about being comfortable. So find the dose that makes you the most comfortable and stay at it. Like, don't persevere with it, or, you know, take this with a pinch of salt. But my recommendation is to find a dose that you're happy with and be comfortable. And I was like, you know what? You're right. So I've increased the dose a tiny little bit. So it's now between like 45 and 50 milligrams a day, which is a huge step down from 120 milligrams a day. But oh my God, it makes a difference. And it makes me realize, wow, baclofen does work. I've done a great job of weaning down so much, but I don't want to live in discomfort. And maybe that doctor was right. You know, the doctor that said the chances of you weaning off it completely are like 1%. I'm like, well, maybe. But at the same time, I've had a really good time going back to rehab. I've had a great time getting to know all the doctors and nurses. And I'm happy with my progress. I'm literally on a third of the dose, and now I know the limit, and I don't want to be rigid and stiff all my life. So I will probably be on baclofen for the rest of my life. And I think I've kind of got to make peace with that because it does help me. And quickly on the subject of rehab, another guy started rehab, and he is another wheelchair user. He's got a spinal cord injury. He's 22, so he's like 20 years younger than me. And all the people at rehab wanted us to meet. And I was like, oh, I wonder why they want us to meet. And what occurred to me is they all saw me when I was completely broken after my accident. They saw me when I was completely broken. And then I left rehab, and then I've come back and I'm flying, you know, like I've sorted out life. You know, I'm also quite buff, you know, like for me, that has been just my life. But for them, it's been like a quick, like, oh my God, look at Fred. He's like absolutely nailing it. He needs to meet this other newly injured fella because he's a really good role model. And I don't really sometimes think of myself as that sort of positive role model, but I think I am. And I guess all the people at rehab think that. And we met the other day. His name's Toma. He's a really lovely guy. He's got like a neck injury. He broke his neck falling off of a roof, but he's got an amazing amount of upper body strength. Like he's probably like a little bit less dexterous, but like no noticeable like hand function. And he's got like strong triceps, and like he's just he looks really well. He's doing really, really well. We met, and it's really nice. Like, so it's really nice to like I don't know, I guess like being like the only sort of role model I've been is an online presence, you know, and to actually meet someone in real life, to be like, oh hey man, and like we seem to get on really well, and I'm looking forward to kind of just, I don't really know what exactly I can do to I don't know, but I guess any questions he's got, I can answer them, and any I don't know what. A lot of people seem to think that it's a step in the right direction for us to be
Yeah.
acquainted.
I think like I've done this a lot. I've done that a lot in my local area for people. And it's really nothing. You're there when they need you as a sounding board. And some people use your mentorship, is what I call it, mentorship, a lot, and some people don't. Some people need that like sounding board or for you to ask questions. And I think if anybody's watching this and somebody does agree to mentor you, please use that relationship to further your own like abilities and skills, because they wouldn't have agreed to mentor you if they didn't want you to text them or bug them or whatever. So if I ever give somebody like my phone number that I meet like at my local rehab hospital, I'm hoping that they text me 1,000 questions. And I'm going to give a shout out to my friend Nicole Palladino on here. She was newly injured, and I can't even remember how many years ago, but I gave her my phone number, and that's exactly, she used my sort of support in the exact way that mentors and mentees should use each other. She asked me so many questions. Like she probably texted me 3 times a day for like a month, and then it tapered off. And now she's like, she goes and she's in Japan right now. Like she's just so amazing. And she does so many things with recreation and fitness. And so I think that's like you're just there to be that person for somebody, because they need somebody to sort of be like, I don't know how I'm going to live, and you're going to give as much advice and support as you possibly can. But not everybody uses it, and that's unfortunate, because some people are just like, I got to do this on my own, and it's way harder to do on your own. Like I tried that for years and years, and I'm the only reason I am who I am today is because I met people who pushed me physically, mentally, intellectually, all kinds of things, socially. They just didn't accept where I was as a person. And I think that's what we need occasionally in order to be pushed outside of our comfort zone. So I hope you're that person for him.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, the comments that we've got on that has been like the most commented thing that we spoke about all day, which is great. Chris says that sort of thing makes a world of difference to someone, Fred. Sometimes just being there is enough help. Great that you can help other people.
I keep adding things when I...
Seeing someone who is somewhat in your condition would make a difference. I am still dealing with the depression of becoming paralyzed. I would have loved to have that. The encouragement is needed. And yeah, I think that's really cool. Like, the only issue is like he doesn't speak English, and my French is conversational at best. So, I mean, it's not like we can have like deep conversations, but like you say, like she said, Heather, just seeing someone and when I wheeled up to him, I was like, hey, Thomas, right? And he was like, yeah. I was like, nice to meet you, obviously in French. Nice to meet you, man. Like, and then it was just really nice. And I could see the exercises that he was doing. And I went over and I was like, très bien. And he was like, yeah, merci, Fred. So it was really cool that like he was really doing a lot of like things that I can't do. Like, for example, like my spasms are quite bad. His spasms aren't, so he can manipulate his body in different ways. And obviously we both have different challenges. I'm not sure like the intricacies of his like bowel routine or whatever. But like, yeah, I could see that he was really doing quite well. And I was like, yeah, nice. I was giving him some encouragement, and he seemed really happy. Like, even though we weren't communicating like natively, like it was really beautiful to just be in the presence of him. And he kept looking over at me, and it was really, really, really lovely. So I think that's I'm really looking forward to being a positive influence on him in any way I can, really.
Yeah, I think it's like I said before, you don't have to do anything specifically, but just knowing somebody and getting to the point where it feels good to know somebody that has the same type of disability as you. At first, it freaked me out. Like if I met somebody, I was just like, don't talk to me. I didn't want anything to do with them. And now, like I saw somebody wheeling in the snow the other day when I went to the grocery store, and I was like, Jamie, get out, go help that person. She's like, Mom, I think he's got it. And I'm like, no, he's like stuck. And then I got out and I'm like wheeling over to like try and help. But then like a whole bunch of people like went over there and helped him. I'm like, okay, I'm sure he's okay. But like I immediately noticed the person in the wheelchair. I was like, oh my God, that guy's struggling in the snow too. Let's go hang out. And Jamie's like, no, oh my God, get out of here, Mom. but yeah, it's community. I think community is the most important thing.
I met a guy called Bastian, and he goes by Magic Bastos, and he is a wakeboarder guy. So he like lived in this van, and like you know how you see people in vans with like big cranes that like lift them in and stuff like
Yeah.
that and stuff. All he had was like a very steep ramp and a rope, and he would just pull himself. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
dude, how do you drive this van? It looks like just a van, and it was full of wakeboards, you know, like adaptive wakeboards,
Yeah.
and that was his thing. He just traveled around, lived in the well, no, it was like a day camper van,
Yeah.
camped in the van, took a load of wakeboarding stuff, and just wakeboarded. He was a professional adaptive
Yeah.
wakeboarder, and he just pulled himself up into the van, and I was like, holy shit, guy had enormous arms, and I was like, holy shit, like really, really cool. And I was like, well, how do you get out? And he just dropped out of it, and it was a big drop, and I was like, whoa, holy shit, dude, like that is, and he was just like, yeah,
he wheelied out of it.
he wheelied out of the van and just
Oh my
dropped down,
God.
and I was like, dude,
Wow.
that is so badass. And he was like, yeah, this is just how I live. And I was like, that is cool. Like, that is
Yeah.
super cool. And then I met another guy, I can't remember his name, but he was another wakeboarder guy. And all the wakeboarder guys, they're real super buff, and they seem to have like these just great, I guess the problem here living in France is my French isn't proper fluent,
Yeah.
but like we can communicate really well. And I meet these like very, very, very inspiring people. And I think it's really nice. So even though I don't think I did anything particularly inspiring, it was really nice to make the connection with Toma, and hopefully we can continue and get to know each other a bit better.
What doesn't seem inspiring to you might seem inspiring to him. He might think you wheeling in like with all your confidence or doing those pull-ups that you can do with crazy good form is badass. I think that's badass. Like whenever I see that, I show that to Joe, by the way. And he was like, he's like, you know that he has way more upper body strength than I do, right? And I was like, oh, are you feeling a little sad about it? It's so funny.
See,
He's
so
like,
easy to
no.
live with.
Yeah. He's like, I'm not feeling sad about it. I'm just saying that Fred has more upper body strength than me. Like he works out more, maybe. Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
It was funny. I made fun of him anyway. But yeah, I think that's badass. So what we find inspirational is sort of leveled depending on like when we were injured. Because the things that we can do, like the first year, we're like, I stuck my finger up my butt for the first time to go poop. Woohoo! Like you're like so excited about it. And having somebody not be like sad about that, like that's badass that you can just, shit your pants and not cry. That's cool.
Yeah.
And then other people, as you get further along in your injury journey, you have to be more impressed by things, I think. But yeah.
Nice. I think we've got to the end.
Yeah, we did.
A quick shout out. For anyone who's interested in podcasts about spinal cord injuries, I listened to the Backup podcast. Oh shit, I don't know the full name of it, but it's by Backup. Let me see if I can find it on.
You froze. You sent it to me though, didn't you? Send me that.
It's the Backup Trust in the UK. They do a podcast.
The Backup Trust. You're freezing right at the very end here.
Oh dear. Well,
anyway,
my internet is being shit, but it's a really good podcast. It's the host is Sophie Elwes, and she works for Backup, and she interviews people about traveling after spinal cord injury. And I listened to a couple of episodes, and they're really
good. I'm gonna freeze like you. I'm going to say bye because your internet sucks. So I'm going to end the podcast. Thanks for watching, everybody. We will catch you back here next week. Bye.